Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Game Set Chat. I'm Chanda Rubin,
I'm Zina Garrison.
and we've got a fantastic show for you today. I'm so excited to have our guests join us. Without further ado, I'm bringing Carl Lewis, one of the greatest athletes of all time. Hello, Carl.
How
Thank
are
you
you
for joining
doing?
us.
Oh, thank you for having me. And Zina, of course, it's always great to see you. Um, I've seen you everywhere throughout the years. Great to see you again. And Sean, wonderful meeting you. And see, I know we've met before somehow, but
I
it's
feel
great
like
talking
we
to you today.
have. Carl, we love, Zena and I, to just kind of have really relaxed conversations. And, we want to kind of start out with you and your career. So you're considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. What does that feel like? How did you get to that? Give me something.
It is such a weird thing, especially living in that yourself. My parents were tremendous. They were extremely influential in everything that I did. And my mother and father started a track team really based on my mother because she wanted a program for girls. I mean, girls did not have an opportunity to run at the time. And so she started a club for girls. And of course, the boys joined. And as they say, the rest is history. But where it came from was just, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, raised with a civil rights mind. My parents were very close to Dr. King and also the civil rights movement. We moved to New Jersey and kept that mindset about education. They were both college graduates. They met at Tuskegee. So I was just a kid that they convinced would be great someday, way before I even thought I could be anything. And they did that because they wanted me to stay with all the other kids. And when you get up and all of a sudden you start having success, at 17, I made my first national team. And at 18, I made my first Olympic team. So everything happened so young and
Wow.
so fast that I never got a chance to find out what it was to be like a normal adult and then this adult. It was just my whole life was in this. And I know Zina, and I know you guys as tennis players can relate to that. You don't really know what the other side is.
Yeah.
And then when I retired,
Yeah.
I'm like almost 40. And so now you're like this superstar. You've lived this whole life and that's it. But the one thing that I'm fortunate about is that my family, my friends, people around me have always been so giving, but also kept the perspective. And so that's something that I'm happy. I watched my parents as teachers, coaches for youth programs and everything. And all I saw them do was give their time, their money, their effort. And as I got older, I'm just proud to say that my goal, whether I thought about it or not, was really live up to the same standards that they had.
Well, it's really weird because I think about, now they're talking about all these siblings that are, play a sport together and all that. And a lot of people don't know that, your family was probably the start of this whole thing.
Yeah, we it's interesting because my sister and I, Carol, as you know, Carol and I made 3 Olympic teams together. And she was actually so much better the whole time. I mean, she's a better athlete than I am even today. Definitely more competitive. But we made teams, and I was 18 and she was 16, our first Olympic team. And it was just a great experience. But also my mother made the Olympic team in 1952. She was an American record holder in the hurdles. So she understood that. And the thing about it is that it was just all the way through the life. My older brother was a professional soccer player. And so we had sports in our lives. But the great thing about it is that, Zina, and you understand this, is sports was used to make our lives better. We never felt like sports ran our life. It was always a part of it. And as children growing up, the things I remember was getting a new TV every Olympic year. And we all sat and watched this one TV, things like that. So sports, what it did, instead of created pressure in our lives, it brought our lives together. And that's the one thing I'm really, really happy about. I had a wonderful time growing up, spending almost all of my time with my family. I only spent 3 years growing up not in one of their schools. Plus, they coached me in the summer. Plus, we traveled everywhere. So I was with them all the time. But it was a great time in my life.
Well, you talk about, Carl, sports making your life better, and obviously the time with your family and all the bonding that occurred around sport. Were there some other specific ways that you felt and feel now that sport has made your life better?
Oh, I know you'll relate to this. The big word, travel. Traveling, I went on my first international trip was to Russia, Soviet Union in 1979. I went to Moscow. And to see the behind the Iron Curtain, really in the 70s still, was just an eye-opening thing. And the things that they valued, like soft toilet paper, things like that, that we took for granted. And then going to Paris and Italy and all these places, seeing other people's perspective of life, just really opened my eyes to the fact that we're not the only people here. And I love the United States. I want to live here. I love it. But the bottom line is that there are so many wonderful places around the world. I learned so much from the museums, from the culture, from the language, from the food. So travel was the most important thing that I learned out of sports.
But tell me this, Carl, because I love this story, but how did you get to University of Houston?
Okay, that's a great story. When I was in high school, I was being recruited like crazy back in those days. And in those days, we only had one phone in the house and we had no call waiting. This is the 70s. So your phone is ringing all night, every night. And then, well, you guys are too young. But in those days, you're on the phone and all of a sudden someone pick up the phone and Dad would say, "Get off, I'm ready to call."
I'm not too young for that. I'm not too young.
Call waiting was your parent picking up the phone saying, "Get off."
Yeah, you're on the phone too long.
So I went to all these schools, never heard of Houston, because of course you have to think of the days of no internet, nothing. So you didn't know what cities looked like unless you went, So then at the very end, one of the coaches came, my high school coach said, "There's this guy, Tom Tellez, he used to coach at UCLA. He wants you to come on a visit." Well, of course, I hadn't heard of Houston. I was UCLA and USC and all these great schools. So of course I rolled my eyes and then I let him come visit. And then he convinced me to come on this visit. So I come down to Houston. I'd never been here before. And it's a big city, which surprised me because I didn't know. And this guy that hosted me was from New York and he knew me from age group track, from AAU. All he did was talk all weekend about AAU and everything. And I could not wait to get out of this city. I was like, when am I leaving? When this guy was driving me crazy. Great guy. He didn't know. And so the last day I was supposed to meet with Coach Tellez. And so I go in and sit down with him. And of course, my eyes are in the back of my head rolled. Let's have this meeting so I can go to the airport. And then he just started talking about about jumping. And he started showing me some Super 8 videos of jumping. And he talked about, here's what you need to do to jump far. I saw you run last year at Penn Redays, and I said, that guy's going to be pretty good. You're a little thin and but I think he'd be pretty good. And then he showed me this video, and I was like, wow, this guy is telling me how I can be what I want to be. And, when I was going on these visits, I enjoyed them all. I didn't have a bad visit other than up until I met with him in Houston. But I didn't, sometimes in life, you don't even know the question to answer until it's answered. And I was trying, but there was something out of every visit that was missing. And then when he started talking about, I think you can break the world record in the long jump. I think you can be the number one in the world. I think you can be Olympic champion. And this is why. Then all of a sudden it's part, you're almost afraid to say that. I want to be Olympic champion, because it's like, you have to be more humble. And so when he said that, it gave me a freedom to think like that. And I went home and they said, how was the visit? And I said, it was great, but it's Houston and I don't know, the program isn't that much, but I just could not get that out of my head. So here's the thing. My mother finally said, I'm tired of people calling. And she said, you're going to make your decision this Sunday. And it happened to be Easter Sunday. So Saturday night, I talked to two people, to coach from Tennessee. And he says, we got a private plane. We can come pick you up for the signing and everything. If you want to come with us, should I send the plane? And so I'm like leaning that way. And I said, I'm not going to tell you not to send the plane because I didn't know. My brother called me later and he says, where are you going? I said, I think I'm going to go to Tennessee. And I was struggling, but I said it. So I went to bed. And of course, there was no way Mom was going to let me wake up alone, So she wakes me up, where are you going? And honestly, before I thought about it, I said, Houston. And then she kind of turned and walked out of the room. And then, and since we're talking about going back, I felt like I was on Bewitched when Samantha blinked something in my head. And I said, did I just say that? And then I was like, yeah, I did want to go to Houston. Yes. And so that was kind of it. When I look back on it, I saw that coach that came because, by the way, an hour later, I called my friends. I called Houston. I called all these people and said, I'm coming. And then about an hour later, someone knocks at the door. It was a guy with the plane.
Wow.
I had to tell him, sorry, I'm going somewhere else.
Well, you were like one of the first people. Of course, I was kind of we were around the same time doing our thing. But what I always loved about you is your professionalism. I mean, just to the T. But I remember like the first time when I had an opportunity to meet you. I think it was actually at the Olympics, and then we end up meeting through a mutual friend of
Yeah.
ours. And I will never forget though. And we had Martina Navratilova on the show, and I told her that I always think of you and Martina of changing sports for high performance of what you put into your body. Do you remember when you came to my house and threw out everything?
Yeah, I came. Zina said, "I want to do your diet and everything." I came to her house and I said, "Girl, open that refrigerator." And
How
I
bad
was like,
was it?
oh, a hot mess. I was no, 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 no.
Oh
And
my
then it's left. And then I said, now pull the watercress to the front and let's get started. I mean, it was just
Watercress. Oh, what?
no, but but the thing is that what was interesting about that is that I changed my diet at 28 and I went to a vegetarian diet. And the reason, in being a long jumper, I was really concerned about my weight all the time. And actually, I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, but I was like afraid to gain weight. I didn't want to there was a floor, but also a ceiling. And I wasn't eating healthy to do that. I just kept starving myself to be there. And I said, I can't do this. This is not right. So I went to that diet and it allowed me to kind of adjust myself. And for the most part, I've been able to do it for years. I mean, that was back in the late 80s. So I started drinking like silk milk, soy milk back in the 80s. I got a juicer and all this stuff back in the late 80s and started doing that. And basically I've kind of kept that way ever since. But yeah, we had to do it. And it is, and I'm glad you said professionalism, because so often we hear people say, oh, they're a freak of nature because they do this workout. No, that's what you're supposed to do. We're supposed to find ways to maximize ourselves. And I think as an athlete, what you always want to do is look back and say, did I try everything? And if you didn't fail in a lot of things, you didn't try it all, because the only reason you make the shot because you took it. And I went to 4 Olympic Games and I tried to win all 4 times. People don't realize that. I went to the Olympic trials 4 times and did all 4 events. And I got 4 the first time, 2 the second time, 2 the third time, and 1 the fourth time. But if I had not tried all 4 times, then I would look back, God, I wonder if I could have done it that last time. So that's the kind of way I did it. And by changing my diet and having that attitude, it was able to help me do it.
I'm so glad, Carl, you mentioned that in terms of your medals, because so many people, most people watching, they know your career. But I want to kind of just go over the highlights one more time, just in case there's some people watching that don't remember. So you competed in 4 Olympics: 1984, 88, 92, 96. You made 5 teams, but competed in 4.
Right.
4 medals, you said, in 84, 2 in 88, 2 in 92, gold medals,
right,
and 1 in 96. Okay, 9 gold medals, incredible. You were top of the world rankings in the 100 meter, 200 meter, and long jump at points in your career. And you've set numerous records. One still stands, correct me if I'm wrong. The indoor long jump record still stands. Incredible. 1984. Incredible. And again, those are just the highlights. At one point, you had this amazing streak of consecutive victories, 65. Mm-hmm. How is that possible, first of all? And second of all, you talk about not having regrets, trying your best, trying in all 4, even if you don't succeed the way you would like in all 4. Do you have any regrets? And what do you feel are sort of the most important things, apart from that you did during the course of your career?
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, I think from an athlete, is the longevity. I mean, and you understand that. So I made my first Olympic team when I was 18 and my last one at 35. So it was, I was the youngest male on the first one and one of the oldest people on the last one, And so the longevity, I think, for me is the number one thing. And when I came into track and field, I had this idealized mind thinking that wow, we can be like everyone else. We can be like the NBA and the NFL and Major League Baseball and hockey. And that was my thought. But when I got there, I told Coach Tellez in the beginning, hey, I want to be a millionaire at track and field. I want to do all of this. But I didn't realize that no one made any money. It was amateur. So, if you want to do it, what do? Either you complain or you change. So we had to change the sport. And I think the biggest thing for me was changing our sport from amateurism to professionalism, the fight and struggle it took, because it wasn't easy. And I know that I probably left half the money I could have made on the table by fighting and dealing with this and letting part, especially in a time then when they were able to define your career. I mean, we have social media and we can say what we want to do now, but back then, basically, they could say what they want to say and it's hard to fight it. So that was it. Now, when it comes down to the competition, the one thing that I did is I was a long jumper, and that was my event. That was my baby. And I remember back when I set my first world record, because actually this past weekend was kind of a funny. So a couple of weeks ago, I will have held that world record now for 40 years. A couple of weeks ago.
You talk about the longevity, and in tennis we obviously have Serena Williams still playing, almost 40, Venus Williams into her 40s, Roger Federer. I mean, this was unheard of probably 10, 20 years ago. When you won your last Olympic gold, you were 35. What did it take to still be able to compete at that level, to have that kind of longevity and be able to compete and win a gold medal? I watched it again earlier today, and it was amazing. I mean, the moment where you stuck it when you most needed to.
Right.
How much more difficult does that become at 35 versus when you were a teenager?
Well, it does become more difficult, because it is not just like, oh my God, I don't want to get up today, my back hurts. That wasn't my issue, because my diet was good, my weight was good, I felt in great shape. I had wonderful teammates like Leroy Burrell and Mike Marsh and Floyd Hurd and all these people, and Coach Tellez. My biggest issue is that all of a sudden so many more things come into your life. Family. I was remodeling a new home, so all of a sudden, instead of trying to say, let me go out and hang out at night, I'm like, I'm going to a furniture store trying to find something. So, well, what is that flower? I like that plant. That's what happens. And for me, the reason I retired is because I was going to a meet, and I was ready to retire, but I was going to a meet, and the florist was delivering the spring begonias. And they were late. And I'm like, y'all need to come on, because I have to go to this meet. And I did not leave until those begonias got there to make sure they knew exactly where those begonias had to go. They just took the pansies up for winter. And
That's real, though.
They were looking at me like, you lost your mind. And the whole ride, I said, it's over, because if I'm going to miss a meet for some begonias, it's time for me to retire.
You know how much time it takes, when you're picking things out to decorate, and you got to get that done.
I know, and they were like, Coach, I don't get it. And I'm like, you'll give you a few years, It's kind of like your eyesight. You're eventually going to lose it.
Well, so now you do an amazing thing, and, let the world know a little bit more about it. I know about it. I live in Houston, but, your ambassadorship at U of H, and you're passing on that wisdom to young people. And I have a two-part question. Are you passing it on to them, but how much more difficult do you see it when they are they have so many other things that they're focusing on? Not begonias, but they're focusing on social media.
On the mirror. Honestly, it is a challenge, because what's happened is that I look at social media because I love it. I think it's wonderful. But what it really is like hundreds of millions of People magazine covers. I mean, that's in their mindset. And so what I try to teach the kids is that life is not a text message. It's real. And so what I've seen the big shift in sports to me is it's the P word, performance, or trying to do your best. Because right now they're so happy with the prize. Okay, I won the championship. I won it. It doesn't matter how I won it. It doesn't matter if all the best people are out in COVID. None of that matters. It just matters that I won. Like, for instance, they had a great NCAA championship this past weekend, and there was a lot of talk about it. It had great, wonderful performances, but about 40% of the schools didn't compete. So it looks like, wow, look at all these schools have all these people here. Well, 40% didn't because of COVID. So you have to, my thing is that let's just do it based on the performance. And that's the reason why I think an event like the long jump, which is really difficult, why I have a 41-year-old beat record and a 41-year-old world record, because people, they're okay to say, well, he's just a freak of nature, we'll just win. And when I came in, my role model was Bob Beamon, who's 29 feet. I didn't look at him as a freak of nature. I look at him as like, I want to be him. I'm not worried about beating him. It wasn't about, I wanted whatever the best was, I wanted to get that. Not I wanted to be the best of all time, but I wanted to jump farther than that. And so that's the frustration I have with the young people, of just trying to focus on being your absolute best. And just to give you an example, one time I was with a group of kids and I asked them, I said, what are your goals? They said their goals, and this guy said this, and this one kid was really fast. And so I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, you're the fastest kid. Let me ask you a question. If you could run 10-6 and win state, or run 10-3 and lose state, what would you do? So they all just going back and forth for a few seconds. And the kid goes, well, I want to win state because that'll be forever. So I would have said 10-6 and win state. I said, okay. I said, what one state? He said 10-5. And I said, so everyone, the message is, if you'd gone for excellence, you'd have done both. So that's what I'm trying to teach. Excellence, perfection, if you can. It's okay as an athlete to have perfection as your goal, because that means you're always striving and you're always critiquing. That doesn't mean it's like, it's bad, because what I do with the kids is that when their race is over, the first thing I do is say, what do you think of your race? Well, I didn't run well. That's not an answer. What we work on things. We work on, like we work on your stroke, your backswing, your serve. What was wrong with your serve today? Oh, I didn't throw the ball high enough, or my backstroke, I wasn't patient enough. Focus on what you could control. And so that's the hard thing, because they're so used to using social media to control what they want, that they're not, in many cases, they're not used to controlling what they can't do it. They have to work on controlling that. You long jump, you're in the air 1 second. So when you saw my jump, I was in the air 1 second. All of that happened in 1 second. So if you're doing so many things, just like a ground stroke or a serve, it isn't a matter of like, I'm telling myself to do it. You told yourself to do it. You learned it. You did it so many times. It's almost human nature. And it's almost like breathing. That's the challenge, to get them to saying, you have to be motivated to learn this so much that you do it over and over and over through the frustration. And then you forget you're doing it. And now you're thinking about one step ahead, and that stroke follows you behind, or that jump goes off the board behind you. That's the challenge. They don't want to take the time to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I consider you, like my big brother. I mean, this guy right here, Chanda, has never missed an event that I've put on. Now, he might not call you back, but he's always going to be there.
He's going to be there.
He's going to be there.
That's my style.
But a lot of people don't really, I've talked to people and they're like, Carl Lewis, they have no idea like what a great humanitarian you are. Like, do you just make sure that you kind of keep it in the back, or that's just part of you, or you don't want, but I think that's one of the biggest traits that people don't know about you.
What's interesting? I met Eunice Kennedy Shriver back in the 80s. And Eunice obviously started Special Olympics and everything. And then I look at Eunice's sons, they all had charities. And so I look at myself that way. And it wasn't, when I talked to Anthony Shriver recently, and he's like, well, I don't know, I just ended up here. This is something I wanted to do for my friends. And the next thing you know, we're doing this. And I see it in a lot of ways the same way. This is what I knew of. And I really enjoy the relationship that we have with young people and helping young people. I really enjoy that. And if I could not sit back and say, how the heck did I have the life that I had? Not only the talent and the performance, but one generation before me, they were struggling to even be on a track with other people, just one small generation. And now here I am, I became a millionaire doing this stuff. And so then we try to pass that on. So I'm very thankful. I mean, look, I told Coach Tellez when I was 18, I never wanted a real job. I wanted to do this. And so I was able to make it happen. And I don't know, I just do that and go do my thing. And I don't really feel like I have to advertise it, and people keep calling and I keep going. It's simple as that.
Well, you do an amazing job of it. Yeah. And I'm also going to let people know, I was so I had the opportunity to sit next to you at the Houston Sports Authority, which in Houston, for most people don't know, it's our big award. We have so many athletes there, and it's like a really big deal. And so when you got inducted, I just remember seeing so much joy on your face. But I remember watching you recently get your ring, and you had even more joy. And I'm like, this guy has won so many things. And you were looking at that ring. What was that feeling for you at that time?
Well, first of all, that ring was worth 20 grand, so I really like that. But you know what? It's interesting. You know, when people say, when was the last time you went home? I'm like, I live there. And they're like, no, New Jersey. And I said, well, you know, mom paid rent and dad paid rent there. I didn't, you know, so you know, for me, what's interesting, like I live in Third Ward, and I go to the local CVS or the grocery store, and people they argue me down that I went to Yates, and I'm like, you know, I love Yates, but I'm sorry, I'm from New Jersey. And so basically, everything I did as an adult was in and because of Houston. So I am the person I am. I was the performer that I was. Everything is because I'm here. And so now, to come all the way around and say, you are, you know, enshrined, you're on the ground, you won't be gone, but you'll be gone somewhere, but people still walk on you with that little stamp downtown. And you're a part of the city, and you're completely one of ours. That's why it was so much. It's hard to even talk about what Houston, the opportunity that happened for me by coming here. And that one little day that I woke up and Samantha blinked that in my ear to say Houston, and how it changed my life, because I know that if I hadn't come here and hadn't met Coach Tellez, I wouldn't have made it, because I had a bad knee injury, and because this guy knew so much about it, he was able to fix my technique. He was a perfect person to handle me, because I was like, I want to win now, and I picked to come here. You told me you could help 29. I'm going to do whatever you asked me to do, but it better work, you know. And he was the only personality that could take that, because most people would have said, well, I'm already number 5 in the world. I'm only 17. So you got to listen to me. I was like, but 5 in the world, I want to be number 1 ever. So you said, you know how to do it. So, you know, home slice, let's get to work. But, and that was kind of how it was. And all of that happened. And I grew up here. It's just hard to describe what it's like. I love New Jersey. I love growing up in Willingboro. I had a great experience, but it's like, that's a whole different time. It's almost like it's another life. You know, it was like my life started over when I came to Houston, because everything happened for me in Houston that happens to adults. And I'll leave it at
that. Carl, the time is flying by. Like, we could keep going and going, but I got a couple of questions I want to kind of, you know, slide in, and Zina may have one more, but you mentioned the long jump and how difficult it is. Now, I want to know, can you break that down for me? Why is it so difficult? What are the things you kind of have to focus on, you know, to get to the level that you've gotten to, and for kids that are trying to get close to that?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. Number one, especially when you're outside, the wind is never going the same way. So think about this. You basically have to run 40 to 50 meters. You want to be at about 90% of your top speed, and you're hitting a board that's 8 inches, and you have to hit it at a certain position. So that's the first thing. So that's the chances of that happening are nil. It's very, very hard because the wind is never the same. Then when you hit the board, we are genetically predisposed to lean back when we jump, because, you know, you've ever jumped and almost fell over forward. Well, because of that, genetically, we're told to lean back at the board. If you want to jump far, you have to be forward. So the split second that I left the ground, I always felt like I was going to fall on my face, and then you save it. And the third thing, you have to do all of these things in the air in 1 second and reach. So none of that matters in the air if the run doesn't work. Because what if you go, oh, great run, foul, sorry, it doesn't count. Or the wind hits you in the face 3 steps out and it blows you back and you're too far, you reach. It's learning that. And so one of the things I used to do is turn it around and practice and go through it, run in the rain and things. But the one key that I will tell every young jumper is that count the steps in your head the whole time. Now, I know it sounds like it's an elementary thing, but I was in Atlanta, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, going down, because if as you can imagine, the rhythm gets into your soul. Because if I count it, then I heard that rhythm. And there was a certain rhythm that I had to go every single jump. And even to this day, I remember that rhythm. I recite that rhythm because I followed the rhythm instead of just did it and guessed. I made that rhythm, and I got the rhythm not on the track, but when I was walking on campus or walking around, I did that rhythm over and over. And so I'm almost walking into people. We didn't have cell phones back then, so I was thinking that 1, 2, 3, 4, time after time after time after time. And then when I got on the track, I duplicated that rhythm. I duplicated the rhythm, and so it's so ingrained that I even remember the rhythm now. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something funny. So years ago, I did Oprah, and Oprah asked me about it, and I closed my eyes and I counted it out. And then when the show came on, do you know she pulled a jump up and put it next to it? I said, no, she didn't put that on and do that to me, but it matched, thank God.
It was right.
And this is why she showed it, because it matched.
So the rhythm, you're talking about counting as you're running.
Yeah, in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That was it. Every single time you hear. And so I did that all the way through the Olympics at 35. So all you people that think that's elementary, do it your whole career. Trust me, it helps.
Oh, that is so how many steps did you take the same amount of steps each time? Like how?
Yeah, 21.
How does that
I took
work?
21 steps.
Really?
Yeah, took 21 each time. And my approach was 163 yards. So look, 50 meters is 100, I think 65. So I ran 50 meters. And so in a competition, you have 6 jumps. So you're running 6 times 60 meters or 50 meters. And then, we leave the board going at about 25 miles an hour. I did. And so then you hit the ground at 25 miles an hour. So it was like, it looks so graceful. But the next day you were Quasimodo, trust me. It was like this. It was really hard on the body. That's why I didn't jump very much.
That's amazing. I love you breaking that down, and just trying to kind of transfer that, to tennis and how we break down our strokes and make corrections. Love that. Now my other question, before I give Zina a little bit of room there, my other question is, so we have been talking about this debate, the greatest athlete of all time, right? I mean, trying to figure out who is across sport, across generations. You are considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. What should the criteria be for that?
Honestly, I think it starts with, it's really hard to do that because everyone, when you think about it, you beat the people you run against. So, and when they ask me, were you the greatest sprinter of all time, or is Bolt or whatever, I'm going to say, all I know is that I didn't want to run against Jesse Owens. I know that. I wouldn't have wanted to run against him or Bob Hayes. So I the one thing that I do like about the events that I'm in, that I'm happy about, is that everyone runs and everyone jumps. So, I'm really happy the fact that I'm in one of the events, the 2 events probably that everyone does the most. Every kid, no matter how fast, race someone, and every kid, no matter how much, try to jump over a stream or something. So that's what I'm the most proud about. I don't think it's possible to quantify that because, you're what you are is your greatest in a picture of time, and everything changes, especially in a lot of the team sports. They change a lot. And I like how the evolution of things, like right now there's a big debate going on about shoes. Oh, we shouldn't have these new shoes. Well, then you shouldn't have, you're saying you shouldn't have the new tennis racket. You shouldn't have the new tracks. It just evolves. So I think what it is that what you need to do is just quantify how you were in your era. I look at people like you mentioned, Martina. I give these are 3 people I give an example to. Billie Jean King, because of what she did for not tennis, but women's sports. Kurt Flood, here's a guy who sued for free agency. Bill Russell, a guy that won all those titles, was player coach in a time when they didn't even want. These are the 3 that I always say that's to me, they're the greatest, because it's not just athletic, but what impact did you actually leave? I mean, and your game has changed forever because of you. Their impact will never go away. So those are my 3, like the ones, because there's so many great athletes. I jumped against Mike Powell, and Mike Powell is the world record holder at the outdoor long jump. And so people talk about it. Phenomenal athlete, great guy. And he pulled it together and did it. I never held the outdoor world record. But we competed against each other for 10 years. And it took him 10 years to win that first one. And so I look at him, well, he's one of the greatest of all time. He beat the greatest, he beat the world record, he did everything. So it's so hard to quantify that. And I think that what we should do is just enjoy the moments. I mean, when I hear it in music, so and so's better than so and so. I'm like, let's not get into that because I'm my bad. But if I hear Aretha, are you kidding me? Who's going to do that? Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and these people never talk about them. Sarah Vaughan, what? I mean, she almost caused my parents to get divorced. So I look at that, but that doesn't take away Beyonce and all these. They're wonderful. And I think we should just be, we're in an age where we were old enough to have been around when Wilt Chamberlain and Billie Jean and all of them did it. But we're also around for LeBron and all of them. And we're old enough to see the evolution of what's going on. And some of these a lot older athletes, I know they're proud of what's going on. So I'm not really into the greatest. I'm just happy to be in that discussion. And I'm happy to be in two events that everyone on earth can do. And I will end it on this. I know for a fact when I was running, and my ancestry is one of them is Guyana. It's Ghana. And I know there was some little high cheekbone little Guyana boy that could have wore me out when I was growing up, but he didn't have the same access. So that's where I'll leave it.
Well, I'm going to finish. My last question to you is, and a lot of people don't know this about you because, I know most things about you. And I wake up in the morning and I look at you and Martina's tweets immediately. You're the first person I look at. So, but any possibility you might think about going into politics? I know you dabbled in it before, and Houston could use you in a lot of different ways. So I've been dying to ask you that question.
That's a great question. I ran for state senate in New Jersey and got into a tit for tat with Chris Christie. It was a hot mess, but it was a great period in time. I've always loved politics. The thing about Houston is that I don't think I need to go here. I have Sheila Jackson Lee as our council person. Sylvester Turner is a wonderful mayor. Our city judge. We just lost our police chief. But I am so proud of Harris County, and not just the adult liberalism in our city, and the way we're represented with people of color, people with experience, and so this isn't the place they need me now. I helped with Beto O'Rourke. Definitely, now my issues, not office. I helped with Beto with his campaign. Anyone that asks, I want to be involved because I love politics. I'm, actively going at it. But the reason I wouldn't run here is because they don't need it. We're on a roll in this city, and I love it. What's going on? The progressiveness is happening. The constant thought of the public and the people. And if you really want to be about the future, Harris County is a place you want to be.
Well, we
Carl,
love you. We absolutely love you.
This has been fantastic, and it has been such a pleasure to get to know you just a little bit better. Your voice is sorely needed, so continue in whatever capacity you feel the love. Keep doing it, and we want to thank all of you for watching because this has been such a fun episode of Game Set Chat. Keep following us on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter as well. And also leave comments. We'd love to hear what you think about these shows. And if there are any questions or any shows you'd like to see, tune in next time for another fantastic episode of Game Set Chat.